Markets and investors and traders, how do they need to approach the 2020 election cycle? What should the default be with regard to predicting an outcome, if one can even be predicted?
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy, right? Why are we even talking about it? It's so apparent. No, I'm just kidding. But, for me, the most important thing I looked at is the economy. In every election that's been run since the 1930s, if the candidate's running on a strong economy for re-election, in this case Donald Trump, they win. And so the economy's doing really well right now, which means it's going to be really hard to seat him, whoever the Democratic lead is. But Mike Bloomberg certainly is running a highly unprecedented campaign. The amount of money he's pouring into his advertising. This is two really skilled marketers who are running against each other, for consumers.
All right. Now, Kenny, you're a guy who's been on Wall Street for years, and you're still there doing it now. In your mind and your opinion, do you think there is at least maybe front-runner candidate between the Democrats, and then would they fare well against President Trump, given what's happening with the views on Wall Street and the economy?
Listen, if you look at the polls, they're going to tell you the front runner is Bernie Sanders, and in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's minds, that's a losing proposition for the Democratic Party and for the election. I think the Democrats then are out if Bernie Sanders is the candidate that they put forward. I will say, the more moderate candidates, Mayor Bloomberg, as difficult as it might have been last night for him as being his first debate, and all the kind of negative press he's getting this morning on how he handled, a number of the questions, I think out of all of them, Bloomberg is probably the strongest candidate just because he's center, he's more moderate, he's well thought, he's methodical, he's not nearly as bombastic as Sanders or even Warren, right? And then I was surprised actually at Buttigieg and Klobuchar last night. They went after each other like cats and dogs, which I thought was interesting considering they're more to the center. But look, it's going to get ugly anyway because this is how the process works, right? They're going to start to kill each other because one of them has to rise to the top. But if I look at the stage last night, I'm certainly, if I were supporting on the Democratic side, I think Bloomberg is going to be the one that ultimately rises to the top.
I mean, Stefanie, you do this for a living. You're always kind of in the know about these things. You try to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in D.C., the Beltway, and everything else policy-wise. Was there anybody in your mind that stood out last night? Did Bernie Sanders, in essence, solidify his front-runner position, or did anyone make any strides?
Yeah, I mean, I think taking a step back, and the way we sometimes think about this are by lanes, as often discussed. So the progressive lane right now is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and combined, they do not crack 50% of support in basically any poll. And so, everyone else is basically a moderate. And so when you pool all those votes together, the moderates still have the upper hand. And then the question, which I think is the right one, is which moderate can prevail. And Bloomberg right now is absolutely looking like he's the choice. I agree. Having Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, who are kind of at the bottom fighting for table scraps, didn't make any sense to me. And that was my main surprise. But it's not really predictive of anything other than the race to the bottom for those two in my mind.
All right. So, Kenny, what exactly is the playbook in from a strategy standpoint in your mind? Do you care about the election if you're an investor?
I think you have to care about the election, but I think what's going to happen is I think you're going to start to care much more about the election after Super Tuesday, because at that point, there'll be a much clearer path to really who's kind of rising to the top. And then I think you have to start worrying about different sectors that may come under attack. We all know that, if Sanders and Liz Warren get in there, it's going to be about financials. It's going to be about technology. It's going to be about energy. It's going to be about healthcare. And so all those sectors are going to start to reassess based on the move, I think, after Super Tuesday. If the more moderates come into the picture, whether it's Bloomberg or whether it's Buttigieg and Klobuchar, then I think you're going to see some of those sectors back off a little bit because they're not nearly as outspoken, right? They're not nearly trying to destroy the healthcare system the way that Sanders is. I mean, that whole conversation last night about healthcare is mind-boggling to me. But I think that's how you have to position yourself. I think right now it's a little bit too early to pick, to start tweaking your portfolio based on what you think is going to happen. I think you have to wait until there's a clearer picture. But then you absolutely have to be concerned of what it's going to look like as we move into November.
All right, Stefanie, we're going to give you the last word here. Kenny mentioned Super Tuesday. It's obviously a big deal. California is up for grabs. What exactly is the strategy that these candidates have to go through to prepare for Super Tuesday?
Yeah, so there's over 1,000 delegates in play on March 3rd, and the candidates need 2,300 about to take the nomination. So this is going to be the first time that Bloomberg is actually an option. He's not allowed himself or not tried to get on ballots before then. And so the goal for every candidate is to be viable. You don't want to not be picking up delegates, because at the end of Super Tuesday, there should be one or two clear front runners, and those are going to be the folks where there's going to be a call by the Democratic Party to try to start aligning behind those to have better chances of beating Trump in the general.